o'clock. Would we like to get the meeting started?
Why don't we call a meeting to order and begin with our roll call?
Deborah Twyman is not present. Commissioner Tharp?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens?
Here.
Commissioner Argo?
Here.
Commissioner Golder?
Here.
Commissioner Puente?
Here.
Commissioner Pierce?
Here.
And Commissioner Richey.
Here.
And Commissioner Degg is not going to be attending. So we do have a quorum.
Have you had a chance to review the agenda? Anybody want to move the approval of the agenda for the evening?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Who was the second? I'm sorry. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The minutes were,
No one is opposed? No one's opposed?
are
Okay.
there additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting on August the 2nd?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. First item for discussion. The creation of the committee for research and make recommendations about the National Register designation for underrepresented community groups. You want to give us some background on that?
Sure. So the National Park Service has been promoting grants to highlight more underrepresented communities. That could be minorities, that could be women. Pretty much anyone who's not well represented in your community now on the National Register would be a qualified candidate for that grant. There was some discussion about staff looking into this because staff is limited on time. The staff is bringing it to the commission to find out if they would like to develop a committee who would look into this idea further. So the idea would be to take a look at sites that are not currently listed on the National Register. We only have about 22 that aren't in the actual historic landmark district, which is our Truman district just to the immediate west and north of here. And so the option for the commission is to decide whether or not you would like to put a committee together to have this greater discussion, to take a look at other properties in the overall Independence area, and to see whether or not you think that you'd like to recommend that they be pursued for a National Register designation. As a reminder, National Register is honorary only. It does allow you to be kind of red flagged if there is federal funding or a federal project in the area, so that they have to take a look at the overall undertaking of that project, and then also would potentially make you eligible for state and federal tax credits. And those are the only restrictions. They do not require you to open it up for tours. They do not have any other federal restrictions. If you make changes to that property, it just means you would be reconsidered for that designation and potentially taken off the register. So I will turn it back over to the commission for discussion. If that's not something you're interested in pursuing now, that is also an option.
Question, for someone that's lived here their entire life and grew up here, what other districts, as far as what are there?
So there's two.
That they would even look at?
There's a National Historic Landmark District, and that's the one that I was referring to. It encompasses the square, and then all of the properties from here over to about River, to the north to the Truman Library. And then we have one non-contiguous property, which is the Truman Depot. That's all part of a National Historic Landmark District. That's national designation. The landmark status is the highest level of recognition that you can have. So any other, properties related to Washington, to Thomas Jefferson, those are landmark properties, not just National Register. We have a local district that's just basically along Truman, parts of Union, and that goes again from about the Truman Library down to Lexington. There's about 175 properties in there, and then there are also individual properties that are both on the local and the National Register. These maps of the districts are in the design guidelines, and then we also have individual maps online that you can reference.
Wendy, can you speak to what the process would look like for once this committee gets established? You know, what our charge would be, so to speak?
That would be completely up to the development of the committee and the discussion for this evening. So it depends on whether or not you'd like to give yourself a timeline, whether or not you'd like to give yourself a certain number of properties to take a look at. If you want to divvy the city up into some sort of quadrants and take a look at areas, it's just completely up to the committee as to how they would like to proceed. There really is no timeline. We don't have a deadline. They do have a deadline for the grant, but I am going to make a big assumption that they will have additional funding come up in future cycles. We can also put in for a CLG, a Certified Local Government Grant, to have someone pull together a National Register designation. So there are a lot of options, and it doesn't really bind us to any specific timeline.
I think you misunderstood my question. You brought up underserved and minority. What districts would that be? That's I'm a little confused.
We don't have any districts
Okay.
that at this point focus on underrepresented communities. We don't have any. We have one district. The focus is on Truman, and that is the only district that we have. So the point would be to take properties that are representative of a minority group, could be Asian Pacific Islanders, could be African Americans, could be women. Take a look at individual properties, make recommendations to designate them based on that affiliation, and then move forward with the variety of funding sources that we have to do so. And that would just be a recommendation back to staff.
Any other questions? Was any suggestion whether that committee would be made up of people from the community or a mixture of the community and the Heritage Commission?
You could reach out to other people in the community. It's difficult to get the time commitment from other people. So right now I'm just looking at the Heritage Commission to potentially develop a committee.
And I guess I'm still a little confused where the funding fits in. I mean, once we make our recommendations, then we would apply for a grant, and then the grant would determine the eligibility for the designation on the National Register?
So staff would apply for the grant. The grant would pay for a consultant to write the nomination, and then staff would work with that consultant to process it. It's a fairly lengthy process, which is the reason why we just don't do this every day. You have to put together a pretty significant application. It goes to Heritage Commission for a recommendation. It would probably go to City Council for a recommendation. It would go to the state for a recommendation, and then to the federal government for review and final approval.
Okay.
So we're looking at, could be anywhere from a year to a year and a half process to try to get even one property designated, which is, again, why we haven't pursued this. But this is a focus that a lot of preservation groups have to try to get more underrepresented community members represented on the National Register. It's fairly non-diverse at this point, and they would really like to get a lot more people's history, cultural heritage representative in these National Register designations.
Okay. And is there like a set of paperwork we'd have to, or like a checklist, so to speak, for eligibility for each property?
That would be up to the committee and how you would like to break that down.
Okay. Well, I'd be glad to participate. Again, the time frame, though, is, I don't, you know, I wouldn't want it to be too compressed time-wise, but it doesn't sound like we'd have to do all 22 in a year, you know.
So we
say-
currently have 22. You could literally make a recommendation to do one.
Yeah.
The idea would hopefully be to have a series of recommendations, or at least, you know, 10 or 15 properties that you think could be included. You know, it's just completely up to whether or not you want to develop this committee, and then whether or not you want to make these types of recommendations. Just depends on the process you choose. There really is no timeline.
Any further questions suggest some action in regard to this?
Well,
Yes, like, somebody want to move that we do form the committee to look at it?
I can't make the motion, Chairman, as a, I'm not ex officio, it's official.
Advisory.
Advisory, thank you.
So it has to
But I'm willing to participate, okay, so, but I can't make a motion.
My understanding is if we don't have a motion and everything, then it's just a discussion and it ends here tonight, unless we want to do more.
So what does this involve? I guess I'm kind of at a loss never having done this. I mean, is there a list of properties that have some history to them that you got to research to see if there was a underrepresented group?
So the idea would be for a small group of you, 3 or 4 people, to basically have a series of meetings, and you all develop that list to bring to staff as to which properties you think need to be further researched to be placed on the National Register. So if you know of a specific property, it's affiliated with whomever, with whatever event, and you feel that that's worthy of this underrepresented list, then you just bring that back to staff, and then I would take it from there to the state to find out if it was eligible.
And we would determine the criteria, is that correct?
Well, the criteria is the National Register criteria.
Okay.
So that's already pretty well established, but you would just determine, again, how you would like to divvy it up. If you wanted to take a look at the city as a whole, if you wanted to break it out, if you wanted to do it by neighborhood, or however you'd like to proceed.
I move that we set up a committee to look into underrepresented groups and independents.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Well, do we need somehow to determine who wants to do that now, or?
Yeah, well, if we form it, then that's my next question. We got one volunteer right down here.
Sure.
I'm willing to participate.
You can have an I vote if you want, or I can do a roll call. It's up to you.
Oh, I think it's important enough roll call won't hurt, I don't think. So let's have a roll call vote. All those in favor of the motion that we have before us to establish a committee to research and make recommendations on the National Registry designations for underrepresented community groups.
Chair Stevens,
Yes?
Commissioner Tharp,
Yes. Excuse me, yes.
Commissioner Argo,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldner,
Yes.
Commissioner Parente,
Yes.
Commissioner Pierce,
Yes.
and we have passed the recommendation with a 5-0 vote.
Okay. Now, there was no opposition, so our next question is, anybody here on the commission tonight, other than Sam, who's volunteered for this? And I would think that we'd want a minimum of 3 or 4 to give us a better balance.
I will.
Okay? You got it?
I will.
Okay. So we're now up to 3. And I'll be glad to attend once y'all are forming it, but just so I know what's going on.
I'll put you down, but I'll send a series of emails out outlining a little bit more about the program and about the criteria and all of that, and that way it'll help guide you a little bit more.
So this would, if we look at things, then we know if we got someone we want to recommend, we could come out of this with no recommendation.
You potentially could. I have such a hard time believing with all the different aspects of history here that we can't make a few recommendations, even just a handful.
Any further discussions about that committee and what we're forming? And then what we need to do is, among those people, try to figure out what's a good time to meet. And so we might start with multiple dates and times, and then see how many can make it, and pick three. My process always have three, and then see how many of us can make it, and then go from there.
So we'll probably take a look at January, from some point from January on, just to get past the holidays, so that we don't conflict with anybody's current schedule. And that way we can kind of move into our planning for Preservation Month as well, which starts in February. So we'll just go ahead and get a variety of committees going then, and see where you'd like to go. But it's, you know, there's so much history in Independence, and we have so few properties, and really 22 properties for a city that has Trails history, Civil War history, Truman history, Mormon history, you know, any number of cultural groups that have settled here. A ton of women who are highly underrepresented in the city. So, you know, I just think that this is a really great opportunity to kind of spotlight some additional people and put another property on the National Register, which we have not done in probably close to a decade or more. So I think that would be a really positive thing in the community as a whole.
How many properties does the city have on the National Register now?
22. 22.
Oh, we have 22.
We have 22, and then individually listed, we have 26. And we haven't had any added to that in probably close to a decade as well. So that would be great.
Well, I've told a couple of people, if you don't like history, don't live in it. Because it's everywhere you turn. Oh, we need to have some discussion here on potential grant projects that would update our historic preservation design guidelines, and that's what I have here. This, and it has all the
Well, that's the master plan.
well master plan, yeah.
Yeah, this is the design guidelines, which is a 200-plus page document. We are looking at submitting, and I actually just finished the final application today. We were supposed to be meeting in October, which would have allowed me to have this in to you before we actually started the pre-application process. But now the final application is due on November 15th. I'm looking at actually submitting a grant. We're utilizing historic preservation funds because we're a certified local government. And the certified local government status basically means we have a heritage commission, we have an ordinance, we have dedicated staff or a person who actually oversees the program. Because of that, we're one of 50-plus communities in Missouri that's been recognized as a CLG. The CLG status allows us to go in for 10% of dedicated funding for that historic preservation fund grants. So I know that's a lot of information, but basically we get a pot of dedicated funding that allows us to go in for a variety of projects as long as we can come up with a 40% match. And that match can be staff time or it can be a cash match. In this case, we're coming in with both. The historic preservation grant that would redo our design guidelines is intended to come in with something that's a lot more user-friendly. We made a huge jump from the first design guidelines that we updated over 10 years ago. It was a black and white document. There were no sources credited for any of the information in there. We had pretty much everything was outdated. We didn't have current materials. We updated all of that. Unfortunately, we got a little overly enthusiastic, and we included way too much information in there. And it is information overload for most property owners. When you hand them, you say, welcome to the district. We're really easy to work with. Here's a 212-page document. Let me know if you have any questions. That's too much information, and it makes it look difficult for us to work through and with our process. So the idea is this kind of 2.0 redo of our design guidelines that would focus very heavily on visual cues and examples for property owners. Do this, don't do that. We prefer this, we support this, we do not support that. So that you just basically flip it open, and the vast majority of the people could utilize just be it pictures or diagrams or sketches. And they, excuse me, they would be able to utilize those visual cues in order to know what they can and can't do, and then what they would potentially have to come to the Heritage Commission for. So The grant is majority staff time, a little bit of cash, about $4,500. And then the remainder of it is grant funds that would pay for a consultant to work with city staff through the Heritage Commission to redo these design guidelines. And so, unlike the last time, we would no longer have a printed version. Everything would be online. The city's in the process in the very early stages of redoing their website. And so we can work with them about the best way to get this information online and very easily accessible. And we can reduce, my hope is by half, the number of pages and reference points that we have. It's a lot of text, it's a lot of bullet points, it's a lot of references in the back of the design guidelines, and we'd really like to cut most of that out of these design guidelines. It's just too much information, and it ends up being overload for most people. That is not the friendly, we like to work with you kind of face we want to put forward on the commission or on preservation in the community. The second grant is the development of construction documents and specifications for the Vail Mansion. The south elevation has deteriorated pretty considerably, which makes perfect sense. It's exposed to the weather. It's got the sun shining on it all year. It's got a series of trees over there. We have enough work that's probably at least in the $750,000 to $1 million range that needs to be completed. In order to send it out to bid at some point when the money is raised, we need to have construction documents and specifications to do that. And so what we'd like to do is utilize one of these grants to hire someone to do that. So the city is putting up $15,000 in cash, matching with a little bit of my time, and then looking to submit simultaneously another grant application that would help the Vail Mansion develop these documents. And then in conjunction with the Vail Society, we would move forward on any number of fundraising opportunities to try to get the money raised to get the work done. I think ideally they would love to see the work done in the next 24 months after the construction documents are completed. I don't know how realistic that is in this environment, but it definitely needs to move forward. We are losing pieces of the building. Some of the stone is falling. We have pieces of the wood that's falling off. We have critters that are getting in there and creating holes. So this work needs to be done sooner than later, and everybody is recognizing that as a priority. So those are the two grants. Basically, the idea of discussion, bringing it to the commission, is that I can put your support for these two grant applications in our meeting minutes, and I can include those meeting minutes as part of the final application for both. So it would be basically your endorsement of staff moving forward with the submittal of these two projects.
Would you like a motion from us?
Yes,
Formal
please.
motion?
We do separately for each grant project or all?
Not necessary. Just that you show your support for the projects.
Any other questions or discussion?
I mean, would a formal letter from us, suffice too, or
It is-
strengthen the,
No.
the bids?
I specifically asked our grant administrator if it was necessary. He said it was not. We did get a support letter from the mayor for both grant applications. At the Heritage Commission level, he said that it would suffice if we just put the support as noted in the meeting minutes. So that was the easiest way to go and why it was added to the agenda this evening.
Do I hear a motion from anyone in regard to moving forward and recommending these grant applications?
I'll move.
Okay.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second here. Any further discussion? Are we ready for a vote?
Would you like all in favor or roll call?
I think roll call will make it stronger.
Chair Stevens,
Yes.
Commissioner Tharp,
Yes.
Commissioner Argo,
Yes.
Commissioner Goldner,
Yes.
Commissioner Puente,
Yes.
and Commissioner Pierce.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
I don't see any public, so there shouldn't be any public comment. Any comments or reports and things from members of the commission itself?
Wendy, I guess I do have a question about that first grant. Would that be open to the bidding process,
Absolutely.
So has the same company offered to, are they interested in doing it again?
We don't reach out to any companies until we
have-
go through our formal process. So one will be, they will both be requests for qualifications. And we have to take a look at whether or not the state or our city process is more stringent. Whichever one is more stringent is what we have to follow. So we don't reach out to any companies until we go through that formal RFQ process.
Okay. Yeah. It's ironic, because I remember last go around, we did talk about keeping it concise and short and user-friendly, and then somehow it just kind of morphed into more and more, bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I think we focus more on being comprehensive
Yeah,
and a little less on the user-friendly side,
Sure.
Easily accessible. And so that's really what the focus is going to be. It needs to be comprehensive. There's a lot of information. It just doesn't have to be so text-heavy.
sure,
And so that's the idea, is to really just
yeah.
knock all of that out.
Well, and electronic only is great. It saves us printing costs, and maybe create like a PDF version, though, for people that may want to download and print it themselves. I mean, they could always do that. Yeah, or parts of
Easier
it,
to-
parts of it.
Easier than having to reprint it when you revise it.
Yes, for sure.
That's true.
Any questions or comments from the Heritage Commission, members of the Heritage Commission?
Has anyone taken advantage of the CLG training online this week? The one offered by the
National Trust.
National Trust?
Mm-hmm.
I signed up, but I didn't attend any of the sessions today. I wonder if anybody did.
I did, but
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else on the commission did.
Okay. What'd you think? Or did you
It was local government focused, and then it was also just a variety of, it was an open forum for discussion about trying to support advocacy and trying to not get frustrated with the lack of funding or with the lack of participation. It was a variety of people. Some people were at the early stages of their program. Some people had a program for 40 years. And so there was just a lot of discussion going on about what works, what doesn't work, assisting people who were just getting started and talking about some programs that had been successful. So I thought it was good. They have over 2,000 people registered nationwide. So if you get an opportunity to jump on or even to take a look at the recordings, I think it would be beneficial.
There was a session on TikTok this morning, too, I think. Something.
Does everyone understand that as members of the Heritage Commission, we're supposed to go through at least one training event annually? And so sometimes online is easier than attending.
It has been of late, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, and all of that information is compiled into an annual report that I submit to the state as part of that CLG status. So in order to retain the status and to be eligible for the grants, we have to do an annual report, and we have to list out all the changes to people on the Heritage Commission, all of the items that you've reviewed for the year, and then all the training that you've attended.
So, for example, this session this week, I mean, let's say I did register, but I missed the sessions today. Is there a certain number of sessions you should attend, even going back to the recorded ones?
No, I would
to
just say,
qualify for training?
no. If you could summarize, though, if the vast majority of the sessions that you attend are on one specific topic, so like sustainability is a huge issue right now, climate change, they have a whole subsection of topics that are all related to climate change. If you focused on something like that, I would just say I attended the National Register conference on these dates, and the focus of the sessions that I attended was this or these. Yeah, you don't have to list out every single session. That would be cumbersome, so.
Where do you find these sessions I mean, there's a place you go to and you find
If
a
you
list?
signed up for I think I ended up with 4 or 5 of you at least that said you wanted to attend. And if you signed up, then I sent the link, and you just basically click on the link, you put in your email and your password, and it takes you straight to the sessions. It'll tell you anything that's going live, and then it'll show you the recordings.
So are all these sessions coming from the same place? I mean, the things that we're supposed to be looking at?
Yes,
Basically.
the session is focused because these conferences are typically in one specific city. So a lot of the sessions are focused on Miami because it was supposed to be live in Miami 2 or 3 years ago now. So a lot of the topics will be there, and the speakers will be from Miami, but there's just a whole variety of topics there that you can jump in and out of. and only 1 or 2 of them are live at a time.
Thanks, thank you.
Any other questions about that? Any report from the staff here?
Yeah, just really briefly, the walking tours that we typically do, our November 12th tour is canceled. So if anybody was going or you know someone who was going, just an FYI, our speaker is not able to attend. So we're gonna probably reschedule that for a May event and do that for the Celebration and Preservation Month. Other than that, the holidays are a little bit slow, but we do get started again in February for our Preservation Month activities in May. So we'll be taking a look at that and taking a look at this committee. There'll also be a committee that will be developed to take a look at these design guidelines. It is intensive information, but if you'd like to really drive the direction that the design guidelines are going, I would highly recommend volunteering for that committee. We usually have a series of meetings. They're only about an hour at a time. We don't want to overload anyone, but it's really important that we get those right and that we utilize this grant in the best way possible to get the best product out of it. So if that's something that interests you, we're likely to get the funding somewhere between April and June of next year. We'd be able to move forward through the RFQ process, ideally by the end of summer. So we would have whoever is interested in that committee sit in a series of meetings probably around August through October of next year. So if that's something that you like, or you just like to learn more about all of our design guidelines, that's a great way to do it. We'd have maybe, I think we only had about 3 or 4 meetings the last time, about an hour apiece. And we just kind of accommodate your schedule. So if you can meet during regular business hours, we'll do that. If you have to meet after hours, we can do that as well. And all of that will be posted through Sunshine Law, and it would be open to the public as well. We do list Section 106 reviews. Those are reviews that are required if there's federal funding involved, if there's a federal agency involved. We use CDBG, Community Development Block Grant money, for a variety of projects, mainly minor home repairs, through Habitat for Humanity. And the 4 addresses that we have submitted 106s for, just so it's in the meeting minutes, is 1301 South Noland, 1205 South Willow. We already got a response back from the state on those, and we can proceed with those. The 2 I just submitted are 200 East Jones Road and 10708 East 25th Terrace. So those are, again, they're just minor home repairs. They're not going to affect any kind of historic property. But as staff, I have to take a look at whether they'd be eligible for the National Register, on the local register, if any of the work would change the overall integrity of it, if it was eligible. And then I submit all of that to the state, and they 99.9% of the time say it's fine. So.
And those were for minor exterior repairs, you said?
It's a variety of things. HVAC, sometimes it's a leaky bathtub. It could be any number of things. And we just make sure that if they have a lot of historic material and we want to keep it that way, that they do that in kind.
What was that, 420?
10708 East 25th Terrace. So as part of our reporting requirements, we have to state that at a public meeting, that these are submitted, put them in the meeting minutes, and so we've just chosen to do that at the Heritage Commission meeting. And other than that, happy Thanksgiving. We have a demolition coming before the commission that's city initiated. That will likely go in January, but we could see it in December. I know we've had trouble getting a quorum at our December meetings, so I'm gonna ask if we can do it in January, but I will let you know ASAP.
Anything else?
No, sir.
That's all on our agenda, so if there's nothing else anyone needs to comment, I'd be glad to entertain a motion to adjourn.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Who is my second? I'm sorry. I'm always writing first down when someone seconds. Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I don't think we need a roll call for that.
We do not. If you would please just turn your mic back off, and if you have anything you'd like to discuss, if you would do it outside of the chamber. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.